Hello everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Game of Pownes. Now, if you are wondering what these videos are about, you may want to check our first video, which was a debate between Lawrence Krauss and Ray Comfort. I will explain more about this after our intro. The intro this time is a little long, so if you want to skip it, just go ahead 3 minutes on the video. Okay? And I'll see you in a moment. Okay? Okay, so the idea of this video is to look at a debate between two or more people, and we will analyse this, but this will be done in a very special way. We will try to work out who won the debate by playing a battle game alongside it. Now, how this will work is that the debate will be divided into several different segments, and each segment will correspond to a turn in the game. And depending on how well each side does in the debate, they will get certain modifiers to their dice roll. So if one side does really well, they might get bonuses to certain dice rolls which will give them a greater chance of winning. In the debate, the sides can get different kinds of awards. We will get certain things appearing, such as poonage, defense poonage, counter poonage, epic poonage, and total poonage. During the part of a video involving the battle game, a player may get lucky with their dice rolls, so although the person they represent may do terribly in the debate, they could get lucky with their dice rolls and still win. When a dice roll goes completely in a player's favour, a lucky or blessed award may be awarded. And this gives us a good idea on how lucky this player was in the game, which may also give a better idea of how badly they did in the debate. I almost forgot to add that we also have another award given called Facepalm, but this is a detrimental award that the person will get in the debate when they say something very stupid. Okay, so I think we've got all the award systems sorted out there, so let's now look at what debate we will be examining. Okay, this battle will be between Ted Cruz and Ellen Page. Now, if you are wondering who Ellen Page is, she was the voice actress who played Ellie in the Naughty Dog computer game The Last of Us, as you can see here.
Only one problem. Right there. To be continued.
And Ted Cruz is a Republican politician in the United States of America. The game rules we shall be using are from a game called Star City, which is an adaptation of the game Space Confrontation, which was a game that appeared in the Games Workshop magazine White Dwarf. The rules for this game are designed for battles between gangs and small armies. So, let's have a look at Ted Cruz's army. Ted Cruz is playing Faddic. In his army he has 4 Faddic elites, 2 Faddic ninjas, 1 squad commander, 4 Faddic troops, and a Faddic commander. In this game, troops can be equipped individually. So let's see what weapons they have. The Faddic commander has a sword and auto pistol, powered armour and flak. And he represents Ted Cruz. And the following units in his army are shown here. Overall, the points value of his army amounts to 2,506 points. As for Ellen Page, she is represented by Zork Ninja Girls. Her army consists of 8 figures. These are 1 Ninja Girl, 1 Fire Girl with a heavy weapon, 4 Fire Girls and 2 Zork Girls. Ellen Page is represented by the Ninja Girl, and these are the other units in her squad. The total points of her army amount to 2,573 points, so she has a points advantage. In this game, we also have to keep track of how much ammunition each unit has, which we do here with dice. Okay, and here we have some photos of the battlefield, so you can get a good feel for where they are fighting. And here we have Ellen Page's troops, and here we have Ted Cruz's. Both teams start with 0 victory points and 0 blessings and luck. So, let's start the debate.
A lot of people, particularly like in the LGBT community, are worried just because in the past, during segregation era, or when women were trying to, get the right to vote, religious liberty was often used to defend and justify that discrimination. So a lot of people in the LGBT community just have this fear due to the past examples that that's what's going to happen. So I was wondering if you could speak to that.
It's interesting you bring up that example. If you actually look at the history in this country of defeating slavery, if you look at the history of defeating Jim Crow, there's leaders in the church that played a critical role. Reverend Martin Luther King stood up against, you read the letter from the Birmingham jail where he calls upon the conscience of Christians to stand up.
Yes. But a lot of religious people also used the Bible to defend segregation, to defend slavery. So I'm just saying, I think religious freedom is so important. It's so crucial for all religions.
And that is the first round complete. with Ellen Page getting a counterpoon past Ted Cruz's guard. You can even see him feel the poonage in this footage. Overall, for this round, Ellen Page gets +1 to hit rolls, and Ted gets -1 to hit rolls, but +1 to toughness. Now we need to roll the dice to see who goes first. And Ellen Page wins the dice roll. Okay, now in this game there are several different phases. The first one is a scouting or reserves phase, then after this there are 2 combat move phases, then there's a close combat phase, then a magic phase, and then afterwards our rallying phase where we count up points and we work out who runs away and who doesn't. Only units that cannot see any enemies can move in the scouting phase, so we'll do that one first. Ellen Page moves first, and all but one of her troops can see the enemy. Only Ellen Page herself cannot see any enemy, and so she won't be able to move in the combat move phase. And now we start the combat move phase. This is the phase where the troops can move and shoot. All units that can move and shoot in this phase have to roll a d8, and add their initiative to the score. Then we use dice to show the score which each unit got in order to know the order that the units will move. And the Zork girls are the first to move because they have the highest score, so they move into cover. The next to move is the heavy Zork girl, and she can see the Zork troopers. The heavy Zork girl does an auto shot in the first part of the combat phase, so this shot has a -1 to hit, but this is negated with a +1 bonus, so a 4+ is needed to hit. Also, because she's using a heavy stub, she rolls 4 dice. Okay, there are 3 hits here, and 2 of them are critical, but we still have to roll for hit location. We can see that 1 critical hit was on the right leg, which is blocked by the dragon's teeth, so this does no damage. But the other 2 hits were headshots, and the head is exposed. We can see that the Fadic troop has toughness 6 on his head, but the heavy stub has a -1 modifier to target toughness, so 5 or more is needed on a d12 to cause damage, and the heavy stub does 4 damage. But remember that Ted has a +1 to toughness this turn, so a 6 or more is needed per dice roll. The Fadic elites are next in line to fire, and they take snapshots at the Zork girls. With a bow skill of 6 they need 7+ to hit, although they have a -1 to hit modifier because of the debate round. And they succeed in getting 4 critical hits. However, 2 of the hits hit the arm, which is blocked by cover. You may notice that when the damage dice are rolled, one of them is a different colour from the others. If this is a 12, it means the target suffers fatal wounds. Also, when a model gets a critical hit, it causes special damage on the target. The Zork girl in question here receives a severe head wound. Okay, now the first part of the combat round is done, so we move on to the second part, with the Zork girls. Now, the Fadic squad leader, who aimed in the first part of the combat turn, takes his aimed shot now with a +2 to hit. Okay, before we continue, I missed the turn of the Fadic troopers, so we'll do that now, and they fire at the heavy Zork girl. Also, we forgot to move some other units. Now, because the heavy Zork girl fired an auto shot in the first combat round, she may fire again in the second round. The Fadic elite can now take another auto shot, but they choose to delay until the end of the turn. Ted Cruz moves out of line of sight of the enemy, and the remaining Zork girl fires once more. And the Fadic elites fire back. And there is some final movement. Finally, we have the end phase. This is where we check the morale of the troops. Troops gain morale points for enemies they have killed during that turn, but they suffer morale damage if they lose units, commanders, get wounded, suffer critical damage, or people in their army start routing. To show morale damage for the turn, the orange counters here are used, and this shows the amount of morale damage done against a unit's bravery. This is then rolled against the bravery, and then we can determine how much morale each unit loses. I'm not going to show the dice rolls for this phase, as it would be a bit boring, but the outcome was that 2 units of the Fadic Trooper squad lost 3 morale, and 1 lost 2 morale. The Zork girls, on the other hand, have a higher bravery, and they didn't suffer any losses of morale. However, they did lose 2 Zork girls, whereas Ted Cruz lost 2 Fadic troopers. Overall though, Ted did more damage and has 4 victory points, whereas Ellen only has 2, and both had a lucky or blessed dice roll during that round. Now, let's continue with the debate.
Well, and so I'm just saying, I think religious freedom is so important and so crucial for all religions. LGBT.
What? A facepalm? Well, religious freedom depends on what the religion teaches. Some forms treat women as lesser to men, and teach that for a man to have 4 wives, this is a great thing, but for a woman to have 4 husbands is worthy of death. For Ellen Page to say that, while advocating for equality for all, is a little bit silly.
LGBT people are worried that they will directly be discriminated against because of the bill,
But we don't have a right to force anyone to abandon their faith.
Such as the faith of George Whitefield, who believed that God made black people to be slaves so that white people could cultivate hot countries. Yeah, you do have a right to make people abandon certain beliefs if they are harmful or false. That's a facepalm.
Tonight at the rally, we're going to have people from all over the country who have lived according to their faith and have been persecuted for it. And it is one of the foundational commitments of who we are as Americans, to respect diversity, to respect the right of every American to live according to his or her conscience, his or her faith.
I'm afraid that round made little sense to me. They both want freedom to live to one's faith, but this cannot work as some practices take freedom away from others. So they both get a facepalm. So in this next round, neither side gets any bonuses. All combatants now roll for initiative and they get the following results. And Ellen Page fires first. Now the heavy Zork girl takes aim at the Fadic troopers. Faddic ninjas now move into close combat with the Zorg Fire Girls. And the Faddic Trooper squad are going to aim at Ellen Page for this part of the first combat phase. Okay, that's combat phase 1 complete. Now we move on to combat phase 2. We start with an exchange of shots between Ellen Page and Ted Cruz. The Faddic troopers now take their aimed shots. And this time we have a close combat phase. Now we count up the casualties on each side, and each side has lost 1 trooper. Also, all troops on either side have lost morale. So, at the end of that round, Ellen loses her heavy Zorg Fire Girl trooper, and only kills one of Ted's troopers. So at the end of that round, Ted has now got 8 victory points, whereas Ellen only has 3. And neither gained any blessings or luck that round. So then, on with the debate.
It is one of the foundational commitments of who we are as Americans, to respect diversity, to respect the right of every American to live according to his or her conscience, his or her faith.
Sure, but for example, still in a lot of states, LGBT people can be fired for just being gay or for just being trans. That's totally legal. I mean, how do you feel about that? That just doesn't sound very American to me.
You know, at the end of the day, what we should not be doing is persecuting people who follow their faith. Like, I'll give an example. One of the couples that's going to be featured tonight.
I know, but what about the question about LGBT people getting fired for just strictly being gay or trans?
Well, what we're seeing right now is actually, we're seeing Bible-believing Christians being persecuted. So, for example, one of the couples...
discriminating against LGBT?
No, for living according to their faith. So, for example...
Yeah, but you think people would use that argument in segregation now.
I'm happy to answer your question, but not to have a back-and-forth debate.
Oh, but Ted, if we didn't have a back-and-forth debate, I wouldn't be able to make videos like this. But enough of that, it is now time for round 3. And Ellen Page has 2 poonages, 1 counter-poonage, and an epic poonage to Ted's defense poon. This gives Ellen Page +2 to hit and +1 to damage rolls. All the active squads that are not in close combat roll for initiative, and unfortunately Ellen Page goes last. So, Ted takes a snapshot at Ellen Page. And misses, so Ellen Page charges into close combat, and the Faddic Trooper squad move into the undergrowth. Now for the close combat phase... And Ellen Page gets 2 strikes on Ted Cruz, but only does 1 damage. Okay, it is now the end phase, and we do the morale damage, but nobody routs. Okay, let's have a look at the casualties for that round, and Ellen Page loses 1 Fire Girl, and Ted Cruz doesn't lose anyone. Well, that was a bit of a surprise for that round. Ellen Page piles on the poonage, but she fails to gain any victory points, whereas Ted gets another 3. And you can see how confident Ted Cruz was during that round. He doesn't even put down his sandwich. Maybe Ted Cruz was just confident that he would get plenty of blessings that round, as he got 2 blessings whereas Ellen Page only got 1. Okay, let's carry on with the debate.
So, one of the couples tonight who's going to be featured is Dick and Betty Oatgard. They're from Grimes, Iowa. They're a wonderful couple. They own an historic Lutheran church. For many years, they hosted weddings in their church until a couple of years ago, 2 men came and wanted to have a same-sex wedding ceremony in their church. Now the Oatgards are devout Mennonites. And so they respectfully explained that it would be contrary to their faith for them to celebrate in their church a wedding that was contrary to their religious beliefs and teaching. The Odegaards were promptly sued. They were dragged into protracted litigation. They ended up spending $5,000 to settle the case. And they made a promise never again to host another wedding in their church. They were driven out of business. This month, they laid off their employees. That is fundamentally wrong. It's inconsistent with who we are. And let me point out on the flip side, let's take the other side. No one has a right to force someone else to abandon their faith or their conscience. Imagine, hypothetically, you had a gay florist. And imagine that two evangelical Christians wanted to get married, and the gay florist decided, you know what, I disagree with your faith. I don't want to provide flowers.
I would say they should provide the flowers. Just like that, just like gay people should be able to get married in the church they want.
I disagree with your faith and don't want to participate. And you know what? There are lots of other people you can buy flowers from. Just like we don't have a right to force a Jewish rabbi to conduct a Christian wedding ceremony. We don't have a right to force a Muslim imam to conduct a Jewish wedding ceremony. We are a country that respects pluralism and diversity, and there is this liberal intolerance that says that anyone that dares follow a biblical teaching of marriage, that is the union of one man and one woman, must be persecuted, must be fined, and must be driven out of business.
Well, that was a very good round for Ted Cruz. He got 2 defense poons and a counter poon against Ellen Page's counter poon, which cancel each other out. So this turn, Ted Cruz gets +2 to all defense dice rolls. Only Ted Cruz rolls for initiative this turn because all of Ellen Page's troops are in close combat. And Ellen Page uses her special combat attack. We will now do the end phase, and Ted's army has taken a very bad hit to their morale. The Soul Fadic Ninja runs away, and the Fadic Trooper who lost a leg is also running. After the 4th round, Ellen Page lost no troopers, whereas Ted lost one of his ninjas, and he has one of his troopers routing and also the other ninja. So, after that round, Ellen Page gains 3 victory points, although she still has a long way to go to catch up with Ted. However, she was very lucky in that round and did better than Ted in spite of Ted's defense poonage during the debate. So, let's now move on to the next part of the debate.
More tolerance for LGBT people who have constantly been persecuted in this country. It used to be illegal. They were thrown in jail, and we've come a really, really long way.
Who's been thrown in jail?
Gay people used to be thrown in jail when it was illegal in this country.
It is interesting right now. Do you know where gay people are being persecuted right now? ISIS.
All over the world.
ISIS is executing gay people. Iran is executing homosexuals.
Yes.
And on the left, you hear complete silence about Iran hanging homosexuals, and yet the Obama administration is sending over $100 billion to a regime that murders homosexuals. That is fundamentally wrong.
Christians in Uganda, Christians in Jamaica, all persecuting the gays to a really, really violent extent.
But does that trouble you at all that you draw a moral equivalence between Christians in Jamaica and radical Islamic terrorists in ISIS that are beheading children? They're not. Ma'am, but they're not morally equivalent. Murder is murder, and it is wrong.
Unless, of course, you make it legal, as Pastor Kevin Swanson wants the government to do, so that he can put the unrepentant gay to death to the glory of his Lord. But hey, don't take my word for it. Let him tell you himself.
This is the highest level, the very highest level of clarity, where the Word of God has spoken. Both Old Testament and New Testament ought not to be any debate whatsoever about it. And you know what that sin is? It's a sin of homosexuality.
Leviticus 20:13 calls for the death penalty for homosexuals. Yes, Romans chapter 1 verse 32, the Apostle Paul does say that homosexuals are worthy of death. His words, not mine.
And who else do you think is at this conference?
Now, my friends, let me introduce to you the next candidate for the office of President of the United States. Folks, please make welcome Senator Ted Cruz.
I see that he makes no effort to speak out against violence to homosexuals.
Okay.
And it's wrong across the board, and there is a difference between a community like Jamaica that may have different standards, may not be celebrating a gay pride parade, but they're not murdering people, and if they were murdering people, it would be wrong.
A lot of gay people are getting killed.
But in Iran and ISIS, it is the governmental body that is executing them for being homosexual. And why does the Obama administration not stand against it?
I don't know. I would love to talk to Obama about it. That'd be great.
Well, good. Then we're agreed on that.
No, well, we're not. Don't do that.
We're agreed on it. Ma'am, we've had a long discussion.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Okay, I had to help Ellen Page a little there to expose Ted's lies and hypocrisy. And for the last 2 rounds, Ellen will have +1 to hit and +1 to target toughness modifier. So let's continue now with rounds 5 and 6. And it's all close combat. The Fadic ninja gets cut down as he runs away. And the Fadic elites keep on aiming. And in the end phase, Ted Cruz's side loses a lot of morale, and Ted starts to rout. As far as casualties are concerned, Ellen Page has lost no one, whereas Ted Cruz has lost 1 ninja and another Fadic trooper. She is almost equal with Ted Cruz with victory points. And no blessings or luck were gained during that round. Okay, let's move on to round 6. Right at the start, Ted runs away and Ellen Page follows up. Initiative is rolled for and the Fadic elites get to fire their aimed shots. And the Zor girls aim at this part of the combat phase. And now it is the final combat phase. Ellen catches up with Ted, and Ted turns round and suggests that perhaps they are on the same side after all, and that she could let him run away to fight another day. But Ellen responds by saying,
Oh, well, we're not. Don't do that.
Yes, don't do that, Ted. Let Ellen kill you instead. And so finally Ted Cruz is dead, and the Fadic trooper is still routing. So looking at casualties now, we can see that Ellen Page has lost 1 more Zorg Fire Girl. But Ted Cruz, on the other hand, has lost his commander, and he also has one of his Fadic troopers still routing. So, at the end of the game, Ellen Page wins the debate with 15 victory points to Ted's 14. And she didn't need much luck to do it either. So, that is the end of this episode of Game of Pownes. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be doing another one again soon. And if you like some of the work that I do on my YouTube channel, please click on the subscribe button in the centre. And I'll see you all again soon. Goodbye.